Welcome to the Crypto Podcast. You can find all our episodes on the cryptopodcast.org. You find everything about me. You can scan the QR code and you'll find my 6 podcasts, or go to roycollin.com, where you find, if you're interested in starting a podcast or an existing podcast, or you want to improve it, or if you want to do a podcast tour. If you're looking for virtual assistants, go to va.world. And we have a current offer where we're doing some websites for $300. My guest is English, living in Australia, is an expert in cryptocurrency and alternative investments with over 20 years experience in investing, banking, and foreign exchange. I could read a lot about him, but what I found is on his LinkedIn profile, and I kind of do that myself, you have like bullet points to say who you are. I thought, okay, this would be a better way to understand who the guest is. Investing and trading, capital markets, macroeconomics, Bitcoin and decentralized finance, helping to find the money flow, commentator and speaker. Please welcome Ian Reynolds.
Thanks very much, Roy.
Yeah, no problem. I suppose let's kind of learn a bit more about yourself first, your career and how you ended up moving from the UK to Australia.
Sure. So I was very lucky to leave university when Margaret Thatcher deregulated the London capital markets and a massive flow of money came in, mainly from America. And I became with zero experience of anything in life, a bond trader. And I moved after a bit to foreign exchange, where I was a market maker in dollar Canada for a Canadian bank, turning over, billions of dollars a day. Eventually went to trade my own money on the London International Financial Futures Exchange, open outcry and all that sort of stuff. Run a prop desk, big trading company. Thought I'd retired in 2001, where I moved to Australia with my wife, who is from Australia. Promptly had 6 kids and unretired myself pretty damn swiftly. Really started building some technology companies, some of which still exist today, some of which I still work for. But I think the real change focus in my life was when I discovered Bitcoin and went down the rabbit hole, never to reappear. And I've been investing in various cryptos, but mainly Bitcoin ever since. Have been waiting since the GFC for the moment to help people to understand the big change that's going to happen in financial markets. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, but there's going to be a big change coming. And I think everyone knows that, but everyone is really uncertain what that looks like. So I've lots of experience to give. I'm just a person hoping to help people rather than trying to monetize anything. And, I guess if I have a goal, it's to become a commentator that's well known on it. So here I am on your show, Roy.
Oh, excellent. I suppose I just go back a bit there to foreign exchange, because I started doing a lot of property in Poland. So I'm Irish, moved to Poland 18 years ago, and I was doing a lot of property. And then I was seeing that like the banks were charging 5% currency exchange, from the euro to the Polish zlotys. And I set up a company with another guy doing the currency exchange. We were able to do it a lot cheaper. And I even noticed in Poland, there was some banks saying, like, if it was Polish to dollar, they'd say, oh, must go to euro first and then to the dollar. And they were charging between 9 and 10%. And then if you look at in the airports, some of the spread is like 25%. And I cry when I see people emptying their wads. Like, with the likes of Revolut, and has that changed, or are they still making a killing with the foreign exchange?
Well, you have to say they're making a killing, but not necessarily with the foreign exchange. So my job was always as a wholesale foreign exchange trader. So we'd only deal with other banks. And so we wouldn't deal in an amount less than $5 million. So anything less than that, people get completely robbed because it's not enough to be worth doing the trade for. But anyway, I think the technology around markets has improved so much that they can now really offer great products. Like I use a well-known company that was meant to list in London but isn't, and they do market rate for the foreign exchange, but obviously you have to pay them some sort of fee to open the account and to every month for processing, all that sort of stuff. So they're making the money somewhere, but there's no doubt that as ever, as in technology improves, the price gets crushed. Absolutely. The situation you're talking about was where you had a very two-tier situation where you had wholesale foreign exchange, which is incredibly tight spreads for big volumes and big amounts, and the rest which gets completely robbed because it's possible and no one else is going to step in.
And
So to answer your question, absolutely, the Revoluts and whatever have absolutely changed things, but it's the technology that's made that possible, I think, rather than the will to change that particular market. Just the technology has enabled everything.
And like I see a few companies, even though it's the smaller buyers, but they're catching individuals. The likes of PayPal, you can only set up the account on one currency. So if you're getting paid in a few currencies, there's sometimes it's 10% that they're taking. It's at least 5. When you have, like, say, Ryanair, biggest airline in Europe that you'd be familiar with being from the UK, like the same thing. They have them, and Amazon and all these. Like, they're really, it's amazing they ever actually get allowed get away. You understand maybe 1% or something, but sometimes it's 7%.
Well, here's the thing, because I've been swimming in foreign exchange for most of my life, and you're an intelligent chap and you understand it. Most people have no idea that they're even being robbed. So a lot of the platforms, it says, you know, we can give you what we consider to be the market rate every time you do the transfer, stuff like that, or you can set your own. And people don't even bother working out whether that's a good idea or not. So you have to say, and experience tells me that even the most sophisticated people cannot understand foreign exchange at all.
And I'm just curious, with exchanges for crypto, what are they charging? Because a lot of the times, you know, you've got different prices and everything. Have you worked that out? Are they making a killing on that?
Well, yes. And I think there's going to be a big change coming there. And originally, when, you know, Bitcoin was, you know, $500 or whenever I first got in, if someone charges you 1%, you're not even going to notice it, right? 1% now is a significant amount of money, but they're still charging it. So as the deregulation wave hits across the world and lots more companies can compete, then especially other companies like the Revolut that we were just talking about, that price gets absolutely squeezed down by competition, I hope.
And I like Wise is okay. It's not as good, but it's still good. But there's a load of people. I mean, I've had good experience with Revolut. It was one time, all right, the account was blocked for, like, say, 2 weeks because I had done, it was a 300 grand property deal that I was sending over to my investor, and they blocked it, and I had to give them a notary act and everything, which is kind of, I don't think they should have the right to ask for that. But I see a lot of people complaining. They moved from the UK to Lithuania, and with all the people complaining, yet the exchange rate, I mean, if you pay a few bucks, I don't know, like $10, you get really as close to Forex as you can. It's fantastic rates that you're getting. But should you just keep enough money that they could disappear overnight, or just whip your money?
Well, you know, there's a reason why London is the capital market centre of the world, in that you have a lot of protection. So if they're not from London, or the UK, I should say, then, you know, you can make a better choice. Wise was the company I was talking about earlier, so thank you for mentioning that. What you think is the foreign exchange rate is not necessarily the foreign exchange rate anyway, because one thing I learned from being a market maker, the price you put on your screen is definitely not the price you're going to be dealing at, because you're always trying to, I wouldn't say manipulate the market, but you want the sellers or the buyers, depending which one you want, to come to you. So your price is changing continually. So there's a lot of spoofing going on.
Yeah. So let's get into your kind of your own crypto journey. So you
Cool.
go into detail on it. Yeah.
I was hanging out this co-working space, and there's this young lady sitting next to me, and she's got a screen open and got one of the exchanges open, and she's buying and selling Bitcoin. And I go, well, that looks pretty familiar. I just did that for 25 years. And so I asked her about it. She said, yeah, you should get into this. This is really good. And it was. And this, amazingly, the block wars started soon afterwards and things were going all over the place. And the more I read about Satoshi and the Genesis block and all this stuff, being a physics dude that's good at maths, I realized there was something far more fundamentally correct with what that white paper said than what I'd experienced in the capital markets, which, although honest, and it was honest, wouldn't know whether it is now, it's all about making banks profits. And I understood that, being paid by a bank. But what I understood when I wasn't being paid for a bank was that actually, is that the right thing to do or not? I'll leave other people to answer that question, but that's where I came to question all of the things I'd believed in before from a financial perspective. And I've just been, investing in various stuff, made some money, lost some money, still got my original Bitcoin, so that's good. I've even run a fund for Bitcoin investors here in Australia, which was incredibly difficult to get done, regulations and stuff like that. But we got to the point now where, unbelievably, the crypto maxi story is still true. We've still started off with, not wanting to go through the whole story, but firstly, they hate you, then they try and kill you, then they quite like it, then they let you do something, then they adopt it, or whatever it is, which is exactly the story of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. If you read Gibbon's 2-volume, however many pages it is, how the Roman society killed itself by printing money and all the things they did to try and distract the population from what they were doing. And it's exactly the same that's happening now in America. But that's why Bitcoin was invented, right? Because of that very money printing that started with the dot-com bust, and then grew a lot with the GFC, and then went completely bonkers after COVID. And that's how empires die, money printing. So forwarding to now, I'm a commentator, got a blog that I have been writing for nearly 3 years now, starting to appear on popular podcasts like yours. So having fun, enjoying life in the sun.
So I saw one of the blogs was, I think it was 2021, El Salvador adopting it. So how has that went? Because it kind of was different around then and things have changed. So how has it evolved?
Well, they kind of made a decision, and I'm not sure how they came to decide that, in the face of their only lifeline being the IMF threatening to cut them off if they did it, but they went and did it anyway. Turns out that the leader there seems to have a really good practice and has brought around at least a lot of peace and tranquility in what used to be a very violent place full of drug gangs and stuff like that. So you can't say it's all about money. It's all about what seems to be a great leader having made a great change and told, the IMF, the bastion of oldness, to go away. And that's worked, and they're still buying Bitcoin every month, I believe. And, they've got the volcano that mines Bitcoin. And so their adoption of it became a bit of the war cry for, support of Bitcoin. And it's still a good story. What's not to like?
Is there any other countries that have kind of adopted it?
A lot of countries are mining it. That's not adopting it. That's just trying to get reserves in if they need it. No, I don't believe it's legal tender anywhere else apart from that country. I think there are some states in America where you can pay your taxes with crypto. And certainly there are many platforms where you can buy things with crypto. And there's, odd things where people can buy and sell a house with it and stuff like that. But that's kind of like a person-to-person exchange. But I think El Salvador is the only country that has made it legal tender.
Yeah, I've heard that as well in the States, that you can pay your tax in some of the states. And with the mining then, because the energy, because one of the things that I came across was Iran, because they've got such a massive supply of oil and gas that I got different figures. I got kind of 5 to 7 or something like that. Do we know where most of the mining is being done?
China.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because China they build all these massive hydroelectric dams with nothing underneath it to power. So there's all that energy that they mine Bitcoin with. They don't obviously tell anybody they do it. And, they're prolific engineers, Chinese. They can put up a town in 10 minutes that takes England 50 years to build. The scale at which they can do engineering is incredible. And so it used to be a big problem that a lot of the decentralization wasn't decentralized. I was in China and the government could actually turn it off any minute. That has diluted somewhat. But I would say China is the big user of Bitcoin mining, rather than Iran or El Salvador or wherever else.
And not just Bitcoin, because obviously there's the so-called 21 million supply of that. And I don't know, is it 19 that's available? But, you get different figures and sometimes some isn't moving. And then you hear later it's moving for the masses, because the reality is, on paper, it looks like a great idea how it can stop inflation if it was adopted properly and everything. But like if we look at any of the fiat currencies, the reality is if you have a printing press, you can go in and you can buy as much as you can of this, which means you can then kind of control every other market, which it looks like they're doing. Are people, I know you're heavily invested in Bitcoin and there's different ones out there as well. How do we get away from the fiat system that's not connected to when you want to buy it or sell it?
All right. So firstly, the fiat system is all debt. Money is debt. You put your money in the bank, it's not yours anymore. The bank owes you the money, right? From the simplest thing. So money is debt or credit, depending on how you want to view it. Is that a good idea? Of course, it's not a good idea. Why would we just want to invent debt? But that's what that is. And so originally, the fiat system that was implemented post 1971, when the US came off the gold standard, simply said the only way you can create money is if commercial banks lend money into existence. I'm a commercial bank. I lend you some money. When you pay me back, that money gets cancelled, but it creates the interest that you have to pay me as money that's been created. And of course, I'm a bank. I don't want to lend you the money if I don't think you're not going to give it back to me. So there's a natural handbrake in the system. So countries have taken advantage of constitutions to say only commercial banks and countries can print money. And of course, once countries realize they can print money, they've gone absolutely crazy with it. So to your point, every fiat currency that has ever existed has gone to zero. So why would we suggest this time it's going to be different?
With everything that's going on in the world, and I mean, you've been from the UK, you'll be familiar with the EU and the Brexit and everything that's going on there. Like some people are thinking the EU is a good thing. Not really. Everything I've seen from it is it's as toxic as you get. But it looks like every single country owes money, and which in turn is why it looks like they've got Muppets in place that are doing what they're told to do. Is it all because of debt that they borrowed and that's the reason why they have full control over it?
Well, I mean, that's quite a complex question. But one thing's for sure, and if you look at America at the moment, despite tariffs and Epstein and all the stuff that's going on, nothing matters apart from supporting the US dollar as the global reserve asset, because the country is bankrupt. The only way they can survive is having the dollar being embedded in every financial transaction in the world, which it pretty much is. So if you lose if you lose the reserve currency, you're going to go bankrupt because you're $37 trillion in debt. Go figure. And politicians have a very short lifespan in terms of being elected. So normally they're going to spend money. And even Trump, with the austerity that he's trying to bring in, has actually spent more money than Biden was spending. So it's completely nuts. It's the end game for America, because once you get into too much debt, you can't get out of it. And you can ask anyone that's ever gone bankrupt about that, from builders who are very prone to that, to anyone with poor cash flow. It gets to the point where your interest payments are so much that you just have to declare yourself bankrupt. It's a spiral, and America's in it.
And with BRICS then, because he's kind of given a backlash for that. But I've also heard that it was Goldman Sachs came up with that. I'm not sure how it is. I've had somebody else kind of confirm that, but it's hard to know. You might just touch on that. And also, is there any blockchain element to BRICS?
I don't know whether there's any blockchain element to it. I would think there definitely would be. The e-yuan was the first decentralized or centralized but digital currency to go out there, and that's gaining a lot of traction. You'd be mad with almost a blank piece of paper not to build your currency system on a blockchain, I would think. Is BRICS a challenge to the US dollar as the global financial reserve? Absolutely not. And I can tell you, if you're on a trading floor and someone asks you, can we have a price in euro to the yen? We will have a euro dollar trader and a dollar yen trader, and they have to cross their prices to get the customer a euro yen trade price. So it goes through the dollar twice just for that one trade. And to try and recreate a system that produces such liquidity that every day in London, $5 trillion changes hands every day in foreign exchange alone, in London alone, every day. You've got to have a massive infrastructure of people that know what they're talking about, settlement systems, counterparty matching off systems. It's almost too big a task unless you totally rethink it with technology. And is the technology there to do it yet? I don't think so quite yet. You probably need supercomputing to be widely available, or certainly within your system to be able to cover all those transactions that make up $5 trillion every day in London alone, just to keep it running.
With commodities then, because it looks like they're attacking the food markets around the world. They're attacking farmers and everything. And I see coffee's going through the roof and everything. Everything is orchestrated and manipulated. Can you see that it can be tokenized, that you can be kind of cutting out so many middlemen and manipulators of the market?
Well, I mean, it should be, but is it going to happen? Politicians are not going to let it happen. We're due for some big changes in the world, as I was alluding to earlier. And if you read the minutes from the last G7 to G10 meetings in the last 15 years, the topic conversation has been global tax reform. So is everyone really going to change all the tax laws yet again, even though they're mega complicated at the moment? Why wouldn't you just implement one currency of the internet? Then you can implement a really simple global tax law. But are they going to do it? I doubt it.
Because that's a kind of hairy one as well. That's kind of like one government, one currency, which in turn can be good. And if you have, like, say, let's all give 10% towards roads, hospitals, and all the other things like that. But the other thing is they have full control and they can turn you off overnight. Whereas when you have cash in hand, that's not really possible. Is there really that danger?
Well, certainly the first push globally has been to get rid of black markets and cash payments, isn't it? And you see that everywhere. And, when you look at countries like India that run on black market transactions because they got capital controls, I know people that have gone into a meeting to provide a technology service and being paid for in a many bags of flour or whatever it was, right? So the barter system is still alive and kicking massively globally, if not in our countries. And to implement any tax resolve is just going to really break a lot of countries, I think. If you look at the UK at the moment, death tax, I think, is 45%. And just now, they're now including all your defined pension tax pots in that. So when you work all your life and get tax on your income, you can't even leave it to your children without the government taking 45% of it. I mean, there's a point at which the public are not going to have it anymore. And that's fairly soon, I think.
Have you looked down the kind of sovereignty route and the legality of undoing it? And the reason I'm asking is because, well, I'm 53 this year in October. And when you hit 50, I had a pension that had paid in the company I was with. So it wasn't that much, but it was. And when you hit 50, you're able to cash it in if you want. And I was like listening to their promises. Or if it's X amount, you get, it'll be worth this amount. 6%, 8%, never was. Like, when the markets go up massive, we get a tiny little increase in it.
Yep.
When I cashed it in, it's like you get 25% tax free and they tax 50% on the rest. And it was the same with a bond a year previously because I'd done it in a strategic way. And they took the 50% from the rest. But with my kind of knowledge, I got every single penny back because they're not really allowed to do that. And it's like what we talked about at the start with the currency. They get away with a load of things because people just make assumptions and they just don't even realize what's happening. Like, is there systems or people in place that are kind of trying to stop? Because the reality is we're all slaves. If you look at the way the whole system is, we're all slaves. Like, if you look at that, and even the farmers, I know that in the UK that the farmers had to pay, the capital gains, even passing it to their children, which they did, which they wouldn't have the money because it's not that much money that they were making from the farms, which in turn destroys the farming youth. Is there ways that, or is there systems that are going to get away from all this?
That's a really, really big question, isn't it? I think I'm always a positive thinker, and I think there are places in the world where this change can happen. And almost unbelievably to myself, I find myself thinking that can happen in the EU, because you won't like this. Unbelievably, they have the biggest economy in the world, those 27 countries, with Bulgaria just joining in. I'm not sure whether it's in there yet or not. And that's a huge economy. The EU is just a political framework. So here you have a fragmenting America with the global reserve currency just about to pass to something else, whatever that is. And the EU finds itself unbelievably, having done nothing for 20 years, right, in a position with almost a blank piece of paper and not too many laws to unwind. So it's a great potential to create a really big powerhouse economy with some new rules around fairness and all that stuff. I think they could do it. Will they do it? I don't know. But it's the biggest opportunity I think we have. And if you could include in that the UK, dare I say, then you've got a real big powerhouse. And with the UK, you bring Canada and Australia and the other Commonwealth countries, and you bring with it an option on Greenland, because Queen Victoria negotiated an option to buy Greenland from Denmark in 1880 something. So if you were to cobble all those elements together with a blank piece of paper, you could make something really different and really positive. Will they do that? I don't know.
I think it's on the fence because, like, there was recently they were trying to get rid of Ursula von der Leyen, and there was a vote. And before, you might have 5 or 10% of people that were actually exposing all the corruption that's going on. there was a third that voted against her. And it mightn't seem like, but there's more and more now of kind of independents coming in, exposing everything that's going on. I mean, they were taking money that's supposed to build rural areas and areas that in need, and they're putting it to armaments and stuff like that. You know, like they're exposing that. People didn't know that. And the reality is, I mean, a free trade, free movement is a fantastic thing. But like, I think it's Romania. I heard just the other day, they were offering them so much money, but on the condition that next year they have to take in so many immigrants. And as you have seen in the UK and even Ireland, I mean, they have destroyed a lot of the countries, the ones that are better, Poland, like, you know, they've stopped that. And like, I can walk at night safe. We're on the fence with how it's actually operating there, because there's so many people that are trying to fight this and stop all the corruption that's going on. And yeah, it's I know, $1 million question. It's very hard to know what way it will swing, but it would be nice. And I mean, if we look at, say, the EU before, I mean, Ireland was always trading with the UK, massive trade together. And then all of a sudden, there's so much conditions that it's ruined the business, the amount of paperwork and everything that's affecting both sides.
Absolutely. But I mean, the thing with the EU is to make the changes across 27 countries as only a political framework is so much easier than having to roll 27 countries in together that doesn't have a political framework. So you've already got, and unbelievably, all those agreements that everybody signed. Think of the Greek crisis, where, you know, you can only spend so much money as a percentage of your GDP, whether that's a good calculation or not doesn't really matter. There was already better logic than we've seen in the rest of the world inherent in the system, which was inherited from the Bundesbank probably. But despite the fact that they're unelected representatives and power crazy and hopelessly inefficient and full of bureaucracy, I think in the last 6 months, you've even noticed that they've changed. And they've changed because the rest of the world has changed. And, you know, they could reinvent themselves and all of Europe, and that might include Ukraine. Let's not include Ukraine for the sake of this argument. That's way too difficult. But, you know, you can include the biggest economy in the world, bring in all of the UK's or Great Britain's Commonwealth to make a really powerhouse nation based on English law, all the good things in life anyway. So all the things are possible. And it could happen right here, right now. We're very lucky to be alive in these days to experience it, I think.
So you're a fan of Bitcoin. Any of the other ones, and your thoughts on meme coins? I mean, like Trump coin, and I mean, I don't think that should be allowed, a president doing something like that. But
well, I mean, there's, you know, I believe 150,000 of them, right? How many of them actually do anything? Well, probably less than 10. What do? Well, we're all looking at this on the basis we want the price to go up, but lots of them, the whole point is the price doesn't go up. So the issuers can issue more, dilute the stock. Because if you want stable coins to be used by the financial system, you've got to keep issuing more and more and more. There's no point in the price going up, because then people aren't going to use them. So if you want your Tesla to automatically pay for your electricity at the electricity station through the software, through your wallet to its wallets, then you've got to assume that the issuer is going to maintain the price at something you might expect to pay for that transaction, which means if there aren't enough in circulation, they will issue more. So that's great. That's absolutely fantastic. But a lot of people in crypto are still hung up on price going up, which isn't part of the utility of most of the crypto universe.
I mean, like, the reality is, it's kind of like gambling, a lot of it. I mean, most people are speculating. They're buying, you know, a couple of $1,000 on 1,000 coins or 100 coins in the hope that one actually, you know, goes through the roof, and then they cut their losses on the other, and it's well worth doing it. But the reality is, it's like going into the bookies and, you know, doing a few horses. You know, there's very little that have utilities that actually have a benefit in society.
That's right. I mean, and you can say that Bitcoin has evolved to be a benefit in society now that people are investing in it rather than trading it, which is different from speculating on it. And that, you know, a fund manager will tell you that they can't have 1%, 2%, 5% as no uncorrelated asset, supposedly, like Bitcoin or gold. And is Bitcoin the next gold? Who knows? But it's become part of the financial system. Bitcoin maxes probably don't like that either, but it has become part of the financial system and will grow from there because it's scarce. And we know what the dilution will be at 21 million coins. So if anything else is like that, then it might do the same. But Bitcoin's brand power is almost 100%, I would say, in terms of store of value coins.
Talking of scarce, like if we look at, say, diamonds, the bears manipulated that market. Apparently there's way more than they say. Is it the same with gold and silver?
Well, I mean, diamonds have collapsed in price, haven't they, since you can grow them in the laboratory and be chemically and physically identical. Gold and silver, we know there's lots of it underneath the ground. We know where it is, but is it worth digging it up? Well, if the price goes high enough, the answer is yes. Is there an infinite supply? No. Is there some on the moon? Who knows? But we definitely know there'll only be 21 million Bitcoin.
And your thoughts on Blackrock getting heavily involved?
I used to work for Bank of America, the biggest retail bank in the world. Was it good having such a mega player? Absolutely. Because all markets need liquidity and we don't want to lose liquidity. What we've lost is the government's willingness to stop cartel arrangements and some players getting bigger than the rest of the market. So I think it was in the 1970s, AT&T was the biggest telco in America by far. And the government broke it up into 3 pieces because it gotten too big. We don't do that anymore. And hence we have Facebook, Google, Amazon completely owning their spaces. And it's not good for competition because even if the competition's good, the big guys will just buy them out. So we've lost that regulatory bit that keeps big players to a certain size. So Blackrock is good, but not if it gets too big, whatever number that happens to be.
And with the current run that's on, what's your predictions? How long will that last for?
You mean Bitcoin going up?
Well, I suppose there's a lot of them that are going up now as well, but yeah, Bitcoin, I don't know. At time of the recording, what is it, $127 or $125 is it per Bitcoin at the moment?
117.
Or 117, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone says that the cycle is dead now because of all the institutional adoption and stuff like that. I think it's not. I think it's programmatically, it's been absolutely perfect. If you can look at a logarithmic chart, just go straight up. In the next 10 years, it's going to go very high. What will it crash to? I don't know, but I will know when it bottoms. And that's the only thing that matters, because price is irrelevant and it's the timing that matters. Because if you think you buy it at 120 and it goes down to 80, you're suddenly a very worried chap. But if you buy it at 80 and it goes up to 120, you're loving it. Timing is much more important. In fact, if you bought it at 140 and it went to 160, it will be much better because you've got momentum on your side and you're always in the money. So people obsess about price. We can pretty much tell where the low is going to be in the 4-year cycle. We don't know where the high is going to be, but if you just buy sensibly, then you will always win. If you speculate and listen to social media, you will probably always lose.
Like the way that the cycle, because if you look at all the different things, I've seen a chart done before, and it was like 3 of the 4 years was Bitcoin was the top, and then it was the bottom, and it kind of replicated. The next time, will it be different because of the likes of BlackRock and a lot of other big investors that won't be selling? Well, I'm assuming they won't. That it might kind of not drop as much.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And we've seen the volatility has definitely got lower. You know, what have we had? 95% declines, 85% declines in this cycle. What have we had? I can't even remember now. Have we had a 30% decline even? There's currently a lot of the market that is still growing in terms of number, by which I mean, if they put through the laws in America, so the 401ks, like your pension fund that your employer has to put into, we call it superannuation here, they are now allowed to invest in Bitcoin. And so are fund managers, and banks are now able to sell Bitcoin to customers. So there's a natural shelf beyond which it will not go lower. So if you like, the low has been raised, but its timing will still be the same point in the cycle. If you buy at the low, you cannot do any wrong. Not saying I ever have. In fact, I don't think I ever have bought at the low. I've sold at the low, bought at the high. But I normally get the low fairly right, within 10%.
And just curious with, because people with experience, your experience and everything. I mean, you've got massive experience, but with AI now, are people able to use a good AI to actually start doing the trading for them, and will it outperform humans?
So what we call AI in financial markets has been there for 25 years. Like when I joined the markets in 1988, we were using instant messaging before the internet arrived to deal with other banks instantly on a computer, 10 at a time, because banks can afford and have to put in the technology way ahead and often contribute to the development of the technology. So banks have had all this stuff. They're called quant funds, right? And some are successful, some aren't successful. Now that that's available to the masses via AI, yes, you might get it right. But crashes in markets where people lose all their money have always happened for one reason alone. It's when lots of things unexpectedly happen at the same time. So given that you don't know what those are, which is why everything goes down such a lot, can AI predict that? I think that's unlikely. Can you find a good trading algorithm to help you make consistent money every month? Hell yeah, because what you know as a trader, you can get the AI to look at all markets at all times under the rules that you set. So absolutely, you can make more by doing the same thing much more efficiently. That's what AI does. Well,
Very good. At one stage, I get attacked. One of my podcasts is exposing fraud and corruption and solutions, and I get removed from so many different things, shadow banned and everything. And at one stage, my YouTube was removed. I got it back, thankfully, but it was like the authenticator wouldn't work because I couldn't log in, and I was like, "Ooh, this is scary." And then if I look at kind of cyber attacks and everything, and it's just how the whole market, the whole world is manipulated, it doesn't seem to be like really money at times. It seems to be like total control. There's that fear as well. I know people say, oh, I can put it into my cold wallet. But if you have it in a cold wallet and I have it in a cold wallet, how do we really exchange it if they take down the internet? Which there's talk about, there's fears of that. They've done trials around the place where it's just gone. Does that worry you?
definitely worries me that very few people can actually achieve a very wide systemic collapse. So if you look at the number of hacks in crypto, very few compared to the number of frauds that happen at banks, for example. But the trouble is, when it happens in crypto, there's so much more money stolen, like billions at a time. To get through a banking system and to steal billions would be almost impossible because of all the layers upon layers of security. But one breach between two blockchains can let you have as much as you can get away with in the time, right? So the problem is lack of regulation, technical regulation. So yes, it does scare me. And, that's why you have multiple wallets, multiple cold storage. People that have got lots of it have their own bunker in Switzerland with no internet connection and stuff like that. But that's no different from having a lot of diamonds and things, is it? It's just with a digital hack, you can get the whole lot in one go very quickly.
Just finally, exchanges, which ones you'd recommend, and wallets. Is there any wallets that you think serve you best?
I've always used CoinJar, to be honest, and I think that's a really good service. There's top-notch security, regulated in London, and I've always used that.
And the wallet then?
Are just the usual stuff that everyone's aware of, but I split it up rather than just having one.
No, that's what I'm thinking, for security reasons, and just find, like, because I ask people as well about kind of, say, the inheritance, and you've got, I think, is it 6 children that you mentioned?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to give them, how do people protect themselves? Because I know even with solicitors, I've seen fraudulent solicitors, fraudulent accountants, and how is a safe way of actually inheriting, like, to pass on your blockchain that's at the same time isn't being emptied by, say, not saying you, but just say there's times, like, people break up in relationships, ex-wife empties the account or something like that. Have you figured out a way that kind of protects you, but at the same time ensures that it gets passed on?
Well, it depends where you live to some extent, of course. So I'm assuming that if in the will it says where your coins are and who you leave them to, and that's going to get executed. I would trust the country I live in at the moment and other countries to achieve that, because you can sue people for not doing it. But I would certainly set up accounts on their behalf, like you do with your kids' bank accounts and whatever. And I would certainly put it on a cold wallet in different safety deposit boxes in different towns, if I had enough to do that.
No, fair enough.
In the way that you would do that with gold, right? You do exactly the same thing, because, gold is one that, before the internet, before Bitcoin, it was gold heists that were the popular things to read about, right?
No, absolutely. Well, Ian, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. You might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me easy there at Subria Capital, which is SUBERIA.capital. That's the website. And there's I produce a newsletter every day and a weekly kind of thing, but we're just starting our own podcast as well. So yeah, that's where they can find it, and I'm sure you'll leave those details in the comments below.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much. They'll be bought in the audio and the video show notes. So that's all for the Crypto Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on the cryptopodcast.org. Find everything about me, scan the QR code, or go to roycollin.com, where you find my 6 podcasts along with all my podcast coaching stuff. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. And when you check out when he has his podcast, I can add that to the show as well once it's released. Make sure you give him a 5-star rating as well, because it'll help him get in the chats. Until next week, take care.